Today we'll be discussing coastal property in Albania. I spent a month in Tirana earlier this year and actually decided to return back to Albania to take a look at some of the opportunities they have on the coastal line. You have the Adriatic Sea, which provides a nice opportunity for coastal real estate property and incredibly cheap beachfront property. This is why they were featured in our top 4 emerging market real estate opportunities in 2020. That video will be linked up here, or you can check it out in our playlist down below. So today we're going to be covering 3 main cities that you should be looking out for. I personally visited Durres and Golem, but those aren't the 2 main ones that I think have the most potential. We will also be covering pros and cons, so let's dive right into it. First, I'll actually be showing some clips of a lot of the things that I saw and kind of witnessed in Durres. There's not a lot of infrastructure. You see this beautiful city center, beautiful statue, kind of Poseidon looking statue, incredible look out into the Adriatic Sea, but then you have dilapidated buildings, something that's been basically completely abandoned, spray painted, and hasn't been fixed up. And that's really what I'll kind of be showing right now in this video. And the reason this is so important to realize is this is the opportunity to have a bit of a first mover advantage. While there are drawbacks, if you're looking for, kind of diamonds in the rough, as we like to cover on this channel with emerging market real estate, this is a serious consideration. While I don't necessarily recommend Durres, it is pretty interesting when you're looking at the ease of transferring. So you can get to Tirana very, very easily, and Durres, one of the drawbacks is you could hire a driver to get from Tirana to Durres, but there is also a bus that takes you. And one of the other towns we'll be covering is actually most likely going to have an airport built into it that's actually bigger than the Tirana airport. So this provides an interesting kind of forward-looking opportunity, and it's supposed to be an international airport that's bigger than the Tirana airport. So now let's dive right into the pros and the cons. So as we covered, Albanian coastal real estate is extremely cheap. Typically, you can get beachfront property for actually less than $1,000 per square meter. This is huge, and this was our criteria for the emerging market real estate video, the ultra cheap emerging market real estate. Next, the lek, the Albanian lek, the currency, has actually been quite stable, especially when compared to the euro or the pound. And one of the reasons this is actually pretty powerful is as those currencies kind of depreciate, with inflation and things of this nature through monetary stimulus, whole nother video, these other currencies like the lek actually have remained stable and appreciate in value when these go down. So if you have debt denominated in euros, for example, and that currency depreciates while your currency appreciates, well, you have a better situation. And that's what kind of brings us to our next thing is total debt to GDP is actually 65%. And again, this is due to how these currencies appreciate and depreciate. Next, what we'll cover is there's so much ease of doing business. We talked about this kind of in North Macedonia as well. The ease of doing business in these countries are incredible. And it's incredibly easy to open a bank account. It's just like walking into, Bulgaria, I would say 10 to 20 years ago. You can open a bank account really from anywhere in the world. And it provides an interesting opportunity in Albania in general. One of the downsides we'll cover is kind of more of the money laundering and corruption, which is something that you don't necessarily have to worry about if you're minding your own business. If you're involved in these things and you're involved in kind of the shady business, this is not for you. Close out of this channel. That's a whole nother channel you want to go check out. So we'll cover the last couple of things. One of the interesting things is the buy-sell cost is pretty low. As I said, the ease of doing business, I kind of put the buy-sell cost in the same category as, taxes. You have a flat rate of 15% for capital gains, all these different taxes, income. And then, the buy-sell cost is typically 10%, and actually usually the seller pays for that. And so very, very easy transactions. And the other thing that's interesting to take a look at, obviously this year hasn't been the best for tourism, and that provides a little opportunity if you're looking to buy a property, because you have kind of stressed property managers or stressed homeowners that, were looking to either rent a property this year, but now with tourism going down with the pandemic, it provides an interesting opportunity to get it now. Well, there's a bit of a dip, and then, buy the dip and then sell high, buy low, sell high, basics of kind of investing. So this is something that's kind of interesting because the tourism over the past couple of years has actually really, really grown. So overall, just to cover, you have under $1,000 per square meter real estate, coastal real estate, beachfront on the Adriatic Sea. You have the lek actually appreciating, being a pretty stable currency. And along with that, you can open a bank account very, very easily. Then we kind of covered that tourism has really grown. And then you have, kind of the first mover advantage along with the low buy-sell cost and low taxes. Then total debt to GDP at 65%, pretty nice. And then you have no restriction over owning property except agricultural land, so you actually have the same opportunity as the locals. Now, we've talked about all the sunshine and rainbows. Let's get into some of the darker sides. So one of the things I think is important to realize is a lot of Albanians, especially the younger generation, actually want to leave. They have this kind of mentality that, the grass is always greener on the other side. And I think while Albania has so much to offer, especially the capital city of Tirana, I mean, we did a whole nother video on that, but, especially if you had a property in the capital city of Tirana and the capital, or an incredible beachfront property in Albania, you would have a pretty good setup because you could decide where you want to go, maybe in the winters, go down to near the coast. And so I think one of the important things to realize here is there's not a lot of local demand. There's actually a pretty high rate of unemployment. And again, since we're covering the cons, I do want to touch on this. Unemployment has been around 12% over the past 10 to 20 years. And it's actually been pretty stable, which is not necessarily what you want to see in a place where you're looking at, 10, 20, 30 years down the line. You want to see unemployment pretty low because you want to have local demand. And with this, the salary is very low. It's around 300 USD a month on the coast, in places like Durres. Durres is a bit more of a touristy destination. One sec, a little sip of coffee. But salaries are pretty low. Birth rate is 1.96%, so it makes for an interesting situation. But I think that the important thing to realize here is that with this opportunity, you're really looking for the long time horizon. You're not just looking for quick returns as someone might be who's watching this channel is more into cryptocurrency or forex trading. This is a type of investment when you're looking at global investment strategies where you're really looking at a long-term time horizon. And that's why cons like this can actually be turned into pros, because they will detract a lot of other investors and you can actually have that first mover advantage that we've been talking about. So while it is important to remember these cons, remember that 12% unemployment, remember this birth rate that has really dropped, remember that there's not a lot of local demand. The wages are not the best in Albania. And, it kind of the last thing that I want to touch on, which is kind of obvious. I think a lot of people that understand kind of coastal real estate investing is it's a seasonal game. If you can have long-term tenants in the off season, that's great. But during this time, you're not going to get the best yields on these properties. So again, this is definitely a diamond in the rough. Now that we've kind of covered those pros, those cons, let's dive into some of the more basically my investment thesis and 3 of the cities I would recommend. As I said in the beginning of this video, I visited Durres and stayed there for a bit, like right on the beach, and walked all of it. I showed that the rolling clip of kind of the city center in Durres. While it's an interesting city, there is a lot of dilapidated buildings. There are some really nice hotels, but again, those are kind of in like one small area. But if you're just looking at coastal property, I mean, a lot of it's dilapidated. There's not a lot of opportunity. But one of the biggest opportunities that I see on the coast of Albania is more towns like Vlore and Seradana. And the reason I looked down is because Vlore, I was actually reading this earlier, they're actually planning, as I talked about, having an airport bigger than the Tirana International Airport, which is the capital of Albania. And this is absolutely incredible. So a bigger airport than Tirana would mean a lot more access to this region of Albania, and you're kind of buying before that happens. So it's something where it probably won't happen in 2021. It might be more 2022 or even further than that. And that's why having this long-term time horizon is so vital when looking at coastal property in Albania. So to summarize, Vlores, Seradana, Durres, those are kind of my top 3. We looked at some of the pros: ease of doing business, really extremely cheap real estate values, especially for coastal, right across the water, right across the Adriatic Sea. You have Italy, and then also you're kind of, if you go a little bit across the coast, you have Montenegro kind of with you. And I think I personally like Montenegro a little bit more, but you are going to pay the premium, especially in the Bay of Kotor. Beautiful bay. I stayed in Tavat for a month and I considered doing some investing. Probably will redo a video on that because I was just starting this channel while I was in Montenegro. So yeah, anyways, just to let everyone know, These videos on emerging market real estate are basically what I focus on while I'm traveling a place. I'm actually recording this in Bosnia, so I'll be recording an emerging market real estate video on here in Bosnia, which is absolutely beautiful, by the way. Just got done skiing in Jornia and currently in the capital city of Sarajevo. So thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a like, subscribe, bell button, all down below. If you know what that means, that's the like button. Hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with our channel, and then definitely hit that notification bell and check all, because this is time-sensitive information. You need to get updated on these things, especially our more immediate investments. So with this, this is a long-term time horizon, so it's good to know it now and then have this perspective moving forward. But with things like cryptocurrencies, with things like stocks, these things are changing, not only by the day, not only by the hour, but actually by the minute. So that's why clicking that all button is so important. Thank you again, and until next time.